The big rush on NHL free agency is come and gone. Who were the big winners? Who were the big losers? And who left you shaking your head and wondering what? We'll break it all down on this week's NHL Squad.
You are talking puck with the NHL Squad Show, sponsored by Game Time. From the Oilers to the Stars, Golden Knights, and the Panthers, the Rangers, Avalanche, and yes, even the Maple Leafs. The Locked On Podcast Network brings together all its local experts to provide the scoops, breakdowns, and comprehensive looks at all the NHL, with plenty of trash talk to go with it. Don't miss the hard hits and glove-dropping hot takes on the Locked On NHL Squad Show. It's time to drop the puck.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the NHL Squad. Sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and join us as we get you ready for another wild week across the National Hockey League. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. We got a great crew assembled here today. Eddie Garcia of Locked On LA Kings, David Morassutti of Locked On Leafs, and Seth Toupal of Locked On Wild joining us today. And guys, free agency on Tuesday got off to a wild start. But before free agency, we had the big name, Mitch Marner, on the move. And surprise, surprise, he's with the Vegas Golden Knights. David, let's start with you since you have the most insight into this. Your feelings on the move and did the Leafs get a fair return under the circumstances?
Well, as you can see, the Mitch Marner jersey is now gone. So we're moving on. Look, like Nick Waugh, it's funny because if you told any Leafs fan last year that Mitch Marner was going to be leaving and you'd be getting Nick Waugh back in return, would have heard some very harsh things to say. But it's funny how many Leafs fans are actually okay with it. Like you lose your top line winger who had 100 points last year to get a third, fourth line center. That's I don't know. We might have to check in on some Leafs fans, I'll just say. But I had been adamant in saying for a year that he was not going to be coming back. Did not sound like a player who wanted to stay in Toronto. And I think the team realized they weren't going to be getting him back. And a lot of people was like, well, you should have known he was going. Well, at some points he said, I would like to be a Leaf. But then clearly last year of his deal, he saw that, you know what, we're just going to ride it out for the year and I'm going to go to my preferred choice. In some way, I guess maybe they were able to convince him to salvage a little bit of face with the Leafs by doing this sign-in trade. But also Vegas was like, we don't want to do 7 years. We want to do 8 years. As Kelly McCrimmon said, getting that $12 million versus it would have been what? He said over $13 million if they did the 7-year deal, because I think the total amount that Mitch wanted, they would do it over 7 years, would have been too much for Vegas. And it's just like $12 million was too much for you anyways to fit on your cap. But there is no salary cap in Vegas, guys. The salary cap is just a concept. Because Vegas, as soon as I heard Vegas was interested, I said he's going there. They're going to make it work because they always find a way.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Vegas finds a way. They always do. And I think a lot of people probably are a bit jealous at. I understand that loyalty and Vegas don't go hand in hand. They're willing to do pretty much anything to move players out, bring players in, but they're kind of like, I don't know, the New England Patriots of hockey. They don't have any sentiment. They don't care how long you've been with the organization. If you're an original member of the team, doesn't matter. They're going to do what they're going to do to make themselves better. And the fan base has to just love that. I have no idea what that's like as an LA Kings fan, to be quite honest with you, because our free agency track record is pathetic. And it didn't get anybody this year as well. So I'm not surprised at all that he comes here and now I'm looking at McDavid and Draisaitl over here, and Marner and Eichel over here, and I'm like, oh, that's the path for the Kings to try and move forward. And their playoff success hasn't been so great of late, so isn't any easier. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised Mitch Marner's gone to Vegas.
Well, and I think it shows that Vegas understands how rare it is for players like this to become available. Think about Jack Eichel when he was getting to the point that he wanted to be done in Buffalo. And obviously he had the neck issues, there was some pretty substantial risk in bringing him on board. But if healthy, he represented like a pretty bona fide top end talent that you just don't find. You just don't find on the free agent market, because 9 times out of 10, the teams that have that player try to retain them. And every once in a while you have one that gets away. And if you're the team at the front of the line to grab them, that's just a huge boost for your team. And now you add Marner in with Eichel, with Mark Stone. The funniest thing about this was all of the rumblings all offseason is, if Vegas is going to be able to put Marner on their books, they're going to have to find a way to move Tomas Hertl. They're going to have to find a way to move William Karlsson to make the cap work. None of that happens. They made one trade to free up some money, and obviously Alex Pietrangelo is dealing with some pretty substantial health issues, so he is, I imagine, going to be put on LTIR.
Yeah.
But they just find a way to get it done, because prioritizing the top of the lineup guys is the way to do it. You can find players to come in and play third or fourth line roles at cheaper deals. We saw a lot of that this offseason. But those guys at the top of the lineup are the ones that make all the difference, and they just don't come available unless you trade for them, unless you draft them and develop them. They just don't come around that often. And it's just classic Vegas to strike, to pounce, and to grab Marner before anybody else could.
I think Eichel was actually a pretty nice blueprint for Marner, because everything you mentioned, it, the neck injury, and then just all of the drama surrounding him in Buffalo, where he just wants to get out of there, and so he goes to Vegas. They completely embrace him. There's nothing but positivity there. There's no real media scrutiny there to speak of. And Mitch Marner obviously can see how Jack Eichel has succeeded there and gotten away from a lot of drama, and obviously no state income tax as well. You're joining a team that's almost always in the playoffs. Pretty good situation.
I mean, look at how he was received. Like he had everyone in the office just giving him the love, and like they wanted to make sure that, like, right off the hop, right, he was going to be accepted, he was going to be embraced. And in a way, I'm like, yeah, Marner is just craving. It feels like that's just something he was like right out, like the smile he had, the way he kind of just felt like he was like comfortable to be himself. And I'm like, okay, maybe there was a little bit, in Toronto where he didn't feel like he could really do that. But I'll be curious to see how much different Mitch is in terms of his demeanor on the ice and off the ice in Vegas versus how he is in Toronto. Because they talk about the reset, him having like that, just the move will be good for him. Be curious to see how long it takes for him to get not only get comfortable, but start to show that comfort that he has.
And what about the Leafs? I mean, they do bring back John Tavares. He gives them a very big hometown discount, but between the discount you get from Tavares and not having Marner, what does Toronto do with that cap space?
They don't do anything crazy, because the one thing, and some teams are kind of realizing this, just because you have the cap space doesn't mean A, you're going to be able to spend it all, and B, who are you spending it on? So I've so far liked what the Leafs have done. They didn't just sit here and say, oh, we actually have money now, let's go and spend it on everybody. They're like, no, we're going to add in a few couple things, but we're going to now use that money that we've never really had the opportunity to really use, and really start to understand that it's not one player that's going to replace what Mitch Marner does. Let's go and fill the holes in this lineup as best as we can. I think it's going to be a lot of trades versus signings. There were some guys that were signed free agency. I'm like, probably would have been a good idea if the Leafs went and got that player. But there's two things. Will the player want to play in Toronto? And maybe the Leafs aren't going to go and outbid certain teams for guys. And B, these players have to feel like that they're going to get that opportunity in Toronto too. Like, there's opportunity in Toronto. Like, I'm doing depth charts right now, and I'm like, I do have one spot here that needs to be filled. Like, come on down, guys. But it's like, you look at the options out there, and it's like, yeah, don't. You guys can stay. You guys can stay where you are, because it's very the Leafs have very particular needs that they do need to fill, but they can be patient. They can be a little patient, but obviously they can't wait forever to also fill that void.
Going to be interesting to see how the rest of the offseason plays out in Toronto. And as you mentioned, how Mitch Marner adjusts to life in Vegas. A lot of other teams active in free agency, including the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. We'll talk about some of the other teams coming up next on the NHL Squad Show. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And look, if you're sharing your finances with someone, Monarch Money helps keep both of you on the same page. And if you can also find out if you have too many subscriptions, maybe duplicate subscriptions, and you can help cancel them so you manage your money better. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. You can use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Guys, were you surprised the Panthers were able to re-sign all the players they re-signed and even add a little bit more to the mix?
Yes.
I was too. I mean, you begin to wonder, just there are certain GMs who just know how to work the cap.
What cap?
Yeah.
What cap? What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, let's give 37-year-old Brad Marchand a 6-year deal. I'm sorry. If Brad Marchand is 42 years old, okay, no, I'll go 41 years old and still playing in the NHL, I'll eat my words. But how do they make it work? They did, trickery, right? Because I remember, people were complaining when the Leafs gave Chris Tanev 6 years. At least Chris Tanev wasn't close. He was like 33, 34 when he signed that deal. He wasn't 37 when he signed that deal. Unbelievable. And then Aaron Ekblad. Yeah, I'm okay with $6.1 million when he probably could have gone 8, 9 million. Like with the way free agency worked, he probably would have gone $9-10 million if he went to the open market, which that's how you do it. You find a way to get you leverage these guys and say, hey, if you really want to stay, here's the number, here's the offer. Up to you. And
well, it does go to show you. Yeah, it does go to show you, and not just for the obvious, for the winning, but guys are very happy playing there. We talk about the state income tax, and you can take that for what it's worth. Marchand said it himself. It is a factor. It may not be the factor, but it is a factor. But just the chemistry they have there, the way that the organization obviously treats their players very well, and then you obviously put the winning on top of that. It is the destination right now in the NHL. When you see guys like Aaron Ekblad taking a significant discount, I know he got an 8-year deal, but I was shocked when I saw, how much money he was getting paid per year. It speaks to how happy guys are playing there and how much they enjoy playing together and how they're treated. I talked to Armando Velez, who does Locked On Florida Panthers, and asked him what he thought. And he said, there's no way they're going to sign all three. And he thought Ekblad was the guy out. he probably also didn't envision that he would sign for the contract that he signed for. But kudos to Bill Zito and the Florida Panthers for being able to, completely turn that place into a destination that NHL players want to go to. And when they are there, they want to stay there.
It doesn't matter how the Bill Zito tenure ends. He is just going to point to the rings on his fingers and the Stanley Cup every time anybody asks. And there may be some that say, well, the last couple of years, it got really messy because of all the cap stuff. It's like, who cares? Like, just kick it down the road. That's what all the good GMs do is they maximize their roster for that year. They kick it down the can as much as they can. All I know is the Panthers have Alexander Barkov, Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Reinhart, Sam Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe, Brad Marchand, Anton Lundell, all signed to at least 2030.
Yeah.
Good luck contending against that. This Florida team, unless they suffer a rash of injuries, they are going to be in the conversation every single year. And when it comes to the trade deadline, when it comes to free agency in the offseason, they're a cup contender every time. So they're going to be able to fill those bottom 6 spots with players that take less to go there because they want to win a cup.
One thing I will say, they are $4.5 million over the cap. So unless somebody magically gets hurt and they get put on the LTIR, like I think like a guy like Evan Rodriguez, he's gone. Like $3 million, he's a candidate to walk. But they gotta shed that 4.5 to get themselves. Obviously, for the offseason, you can be 10%. I think it's like 10% over the cap.
Yeah.
But you can't be over the cap once the season starts. So they got $4.5 million they're gonna have to shed. So I expect Billy Zito to also find a way to get something back for a player or two that's going to allow him to do even more potentially down the road.
What about your LA Kings, Eddie? Your feelings about how they handled free agency?
It was interesting. I'll say that. Losing Vladislav Gavrikov for 7x7 was a pretty big surprise. I would have thought that for a team that believes and I know it may sound funny for a team that can't get out of the first round, but they believe that they are, a team that's close to going on a deep run. And look, there were a lot of people, and I'll even put my hand up, that thought this past year that was a team that could go to the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, it didn't happen. They bring in a new GM, and his idea is to just make some little tweaks here and there, get the team a little bit more experience, get them a little bit bigger. But I don't understand letting Gavrikov go if he wouldn't sign for a comparable deal in LA. I don't obviously know the details behind that, but to me, when I saw he signed for 7x7 in New York, I'm like, why didn't we sign him for that? I get the years. But as we've talked about with Florida, if you think you're a contender now, or if you're going for it now, who cares about year 6 and 7? We care about now. So that was a head scratcher. And then, the Cody Ceci thing, is being universally laughed at by pretty much everyone around the league. 4 years of that guy, that doesn't make any sense. And then the Corey Perry situation is such a weird situation because I get why they did it. And that is also, hey, we're close. Let's get an agitator. Let's get a guy who performs in the playoffs. Okay, makes sense. People in LA hate Corey Perry. They hate him, including me. He was so many years with the Ducks, and then he's with the Oilers. And the thought of him in a Kings jersey makes a lot of people throw up in their mouths. So I understand the move and why he did it. It makes hockey sense for a short-term deal. But there's so many fans that just are so they have a bad taste in their mouth thinking about that guy playing for their team. So it was a very, very polarizing offseason for the LA Kings.
What even makes it more like, okay, you lose Gavrikov to the Rangers, but the Rangers were like, okay, we're going to bring Gavrikov and we're going to let Keandre Miller walk. Why weren't the Kings allowed? Like, if they need a defenseman, it would have been a perfect salvageable say, hey, we lost Gavrikov, but here's Keandre Miller. Like, I think they could have probably pulled off a similar trade to what Carolina did to get him. Like, that's the part to me. It's like, okay, you lose Gavrikov, but you have so much cap space available. You could have made a big push for another defenseman maybe it's just LA. I think LA would be a great destination for some guys, and maybe they banked on getting a certain. And this is maybe where Ken Holland got into a little bit of trouble. Say, okay, if we let Gavrikov rock, we got a bunch of options we can get, and none of them, I guess, none of the top ones wanted to go to LA because it felt like those other guys were more secondary options.
Yeah, he decided to get older, which is an interesting move. And Keandre Miller was talked about. We talked about that option if Gavrikov were to walk and making a trade for him. I don't know if they even looked into that. We talked about maybe going after Bo Byram as well in Buffalo. Getting younger and having guys that can actually be maybe not an upgrade, but be somewhat on a similar level, and you can have them for years to come. A guy. I mean, Brian Dumoulin, he played well in the playoffs for New Jersey, but he's not a spring chicken anymore. And he'd be a great probably third pairing guy, kind of like Joel Edmondson is now. But on the second pairing, that's tough. And then it was not a great offseason for the Kings. There's no doubt about that.
All right, we've got a lot more to cover here on the squad, a little more free agency, and including one big fish who's still out there. We'll talk about that next. One question I got to ask, is there any other team out there that the way they handled free agency just left you guys scratching your heads?
I want to know about Seth's team. What's going on with the Wild? It feels like they're waiting. They made that trade for to get Tarasenko's rights. Are they just kind of concerned about the Kaprizov situation?
I think that's part of it, certainly. And Bill Guerin in his latest update said, they're still working on the Kaprizov situation, but he's not really worried about that spiraling out of control, especially with the new CBA stuff. The Wild will be able to offer 8 years, and nobody else, if this goes to next offseason, is going to be able to offer any more than 6. So they have a clear advantage in that situation. But, the interesting one is we have just heard Bill Guerin talk about flexibility all offseason, and we knew that this was going to be the offseason where there was money to spend. But the Wild have positioned themselves all offseason to, it almost feels like, make a huge splash at the trade deadline. There have been a lot of GMs that just are not really willing to move players off the roster right now. We learned a lot of that with the Marco Rossi situation playing out the way that it has, where the most common return that teams have offered has been draft picks. That doesn't really help the Minnesota Wild right now, although I still maintain that if you pull in the picks, you can flip them as part of a bigger deal. So I wasn't super put off by draft picks being the return, but now we got Bill Guerin saying that if anyone tries to offer sheet Rossi, the Wild are going to match. So it seems as though the big offseason questions were going to be what happens with Marco Rossi. It looks like he's staying. And what does the number look like for Kirill Kaprizov? And beyond that, a couple of minor moves. Tarasenko just feels like kind of a placeholder in that top 6. Nico Sturm was, I like Nico Sturm, so I was glad to see him return, but it just feels like the Wild were kind of positioning themselves to have a large amount of cap space at the trade deadline, which they will have, barring injuries, and just waiting to see who falls out of it. They keep getting linked to the Buffalo Sabres. Maybe this is the season that if they fall out of it and Tage Thompson says, I got to tap out, that they just put all the chips in the middle of the table and they say, we're going to go get this guy.
There is one big fish still out there. Nikolaj Ehlers yet to sign as of the time that we're recording this. Your thoughts about who might be in the running for Ehlers and where he might be the best fit?
Well, can we talk just to start about what the Jets have done to fill that spot in the lineup? Because anytime you can go and get Gustav Nyquist, you just have to do it. And having seen him play the final 20 plus games of the season with the Wild and being offsides on the game or the series changing goal. If the Wild score that goal, it feels like they win that game and they maybe have enough to beat the Golden Knights in that series. But stick your leg out like 6 inches and you're on sides. You couldn't do it, and the Wild lose again. He does not have a lot left from what I was able to see, and so bringing him in to fill the spot of a very productive player could bite the Jets, to say the least.
Yeah, like there was all this excitement that they got Jonathan Taves, hometown guy comes in, is going to help them put them over the edge. And then Ehlers is like, yeah, no, guys, I don't think now there's a chance he could still go back. I don't think the door is fully closed there, but I do think it's mostly shut. Like apparently he's not really into the bright lights of Winnipeg. And I'm like, we're talking about Winnipeg here, right? So like if you're a team that wants to go out and get Nick Ehlers, do you have a lot of attention on your team? It might not work out for Ehlers. I think if you're like Nick Ehlers, he might go to a team. There's like
how
Carolina.
I was going to say, how about Carolina?
They're just going to throw like they got to sign guys. They have money. Just they're like, take our money. We have it. And I think it would be a good situation for him personally. Like he wouldn't have to be the guy there. I don't know. Like Ehlers, I thought he would have signed by it was supposed to be today. I don't know what, as we're recording this is Wednesday, he was supposed to sign. I don't know what the holdup is there. I'm certain that maybe there's a team that he thought was going to offer them something, didn't end up actually doing it. Like somebody kept bringing up Washington to me, and I'm like, I don't know if Washington has what it takes to get that done, unless they make some moves on the blue line to move somebody. But it's very interesting. Like it's like he's the biggest free agent left, and yet he doesn't want to act like he's the biggest free agent left either. It's weird.
The fact that he didn't sign by the fact that he is still kind of holding it up in the air allow me to recklessly speculate that maybe he's hoping that Winnipeg is willing to match the highest offer out there for him, and he is just waiting for them to kind of get their ducks in a row. That, again, I have nothing to go off of with that, but I always feel like in situations like this, if a player waits to make a decision, they are kind of unofficially saying, hey, are you guys willing to maybe add a couple mil, and then we can get this done?
And Winnipeg has the space to do it, but Winnipeg is also a team that doesn't really like to spend to the cap all the time, which I don't understand why not. They have like over, I think right now I'm looking at like cap wages. They have over $17 million in cap space, but I'm sure there's also a line that they want to draw, and because Kyle Connor is also due up at the end of next. He's on his last year, so I'm wondering if they're sort of thinking Cole Perfetti is going to need a new deal. Like they're thinking about the future, I think there. And like, well, we like Ehlers, but how much do we love him? And I think that's also maybe part of it too.
Yeah. And then if we give Ehlers, $9 million, then we've got to give Connor $9 million and all of a sudden.
I think you're going to have to give Kyle Connor more than $9 million. I think he's going to be wanting the 10, 11 mark. He might even want the Rantanen deal from them.
Well, speaking of Rantanen, Carolina missed out on that. They supposedly were in on Marner, or at least one of the finalists. Obviously, that didn't happen. So they still have a chance to try and get that sort of marquee guy that they've been coveting for a while. This is the last chance to get anybody for this year. We'll see if they land him. To me, that's the spot for him.
Is there a reason it seems that players just don't want to go to Carolina?
I've heard some people say like, yes, they got money to spend. The fan base is starting to get there again, but the ownership, there's not a lot of love for that owner. He doesn't like to spend a lot of money. Like he's spending money on players, but it's the other things. It's the training facilities. It's how players are taken care of. That speaks volumes. And so two players. Like they say, oh, once we get Rantanen in, we'll try to convince him to stay. Well, you convinced that he needed to be traded again. So I think, like, to me, those sort of things, when they happen, it makes players think twice. Is that actually a place I want to go if they can't keep a Mikko Rantanen? And they offered him the money. This was not because Rantanen, like, they weren't willing to sign Rantanen. It's just one of those things where they got to get these guys in the building when they're younger, like what they did with Stankoven, and say, here you go. Here's your deal, which a great deal for, in my opinion, for Carolina for what Stankoven had done, for getting him locked in like that. But yeah, again, it's just one of those things where I feel like there's a reputation in Carolina, maybe similar, getting to like that Buffalo territory. While Carolina's good, it's like, at least they got that going for them. There's just other things, that just aren't playing to their, giving them that really good, I want to stay here vibe.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking puck with you tonight. I want to thank everyone for making the Squad Show your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no off season. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. You can find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Gil Martin on behalf of Seth Toupal, David Morassutti, and Eddie Garcia. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the NHL Squad Show.